Welcome to Inside Scoop with Sean Emery. Every week we are examining something new, bringing you closer to companies, sectors, and themes. This recording should not be construed as a substitute for personalized individual advice from Avery & Company or any guest on the show. This is for educational purposes only and not intended to make an offer or solicitation for any companies or securities mentioned. Hello, everybody. This is Inside Scoop. Today we have Brendan Rogers. He is the co-founder of WAG. WAG is the company that took the pet market by storm. Big beneficiaries pre-COVID, bigger beneficiaries post-COVID. The company is now public. It trades under the ticker PET, P-E-T. This will be a two-part series. The first part is 0 to 100. And ultimately what we are doing is trying to understand how one builds business. It's a really good piece or series for founders. We get plenty of founder listeners on the podcast. We also have plenty of investor listeners on the podcast, whether direct investors and or investment firms. And I think understanding the dynamics of how a successful business builds itself is very important to have in your brain. And the second part is really around current trends. So here and now, everything around the pet industry, on-demand market, given pet or WAG is specifically in that area. And the last part is really anything Brendan is seeing. He also runs 2AM VC, which is a venture firm specifically out of India, and seed stage around technology and some other areas of focus. I had a really good time speaking with him, so I hope you're able to watch both series or episodes as they come out. With that, let's get to the episode. All right, we're here with Brendan Rogers. What's going on, man?
Nothing much. Just another day in Sarasota, Florida, just enjoying the sunshine and the nice weather.
Brendan is the co-founder of WAG, also the co-founder of 2AM VC, a seed stage fund focus on kind of next generation startups in India. There's so much to talk about today. I really wanted to focus in on a couple different areas, mainly being 0 to WAG, how you really thought about building this business. On this podcast, we get tons of founders. We also get tons of investors that listen to it. And I think the important takeaway for them is to listen, keyword listen to successful founders such as yourself and, try to extract anything. And then for the investors, I think it's developing some form of pattern recognition, seeing what you went through, how you went through it to really gauge maybe their next investment, whether it's private or public. So let's start with Brendan, the origin story of yourself, pre-WAG. Who is Brendan?
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me on, and happy to share my journey from founder to now on the dark side as a VC. So I grew up in a small town in Rhode Island near the beach, and I think what has led me to start businesses and invest in entrepreneurs is I grew up being an athlete, so I loved being on teams. I played many different sports, but soccer was the sport that I continued to play in college and whatnot. And I was just very attracted to just sports in general and being on teams and going through the ups and downs and the wins and the losses. And then parallelly, I always just had a knack for just business. My father was in sales his whole life in the telecom space. I would always, try to learn how to make like extra money or flip things. So I was big on like Craigslist back in the day and eBay. That kind of got me started into like in business and just like loved like seeing money transacting and stuff. And then with sports, it kind of fueled me. So that's kind of the origin story of like where I grew up. Just loved hustling, loved sports, was a kid that was always outside running around. Got my first computer at like 13 or 14. And it was like when everybody had the 56K modems where you couldn't be on the phone and stuff like that. So that was kind of the origin story of, where I grew up and how I got really into startups to some degree.
Yeah. And then, so at some point in this journey, a couple of light bulbs started to hit off, whether it's like friendships, networks, things like that. Talk about that time period where, whether it was just before, and I know there was a dating app that was being created here and then something else thereafter. The light bulb maybe in that moment first, the first one, right? Because it sounds like it was a couple steps before even the, call it the home run at some point was hit. Talk about the couple bunts that happened before that for all the athletes out there.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So basically, in 2000 and like 9 and 10, I think mobile was very new. You started seeing like Steve Jobs talk about apps. And then you saw like Facebook, really kind of take off from colleges to the mainstream. And you saw the movie like The Social Network came out. Um, I was really intrigued with just technology and startups. And I think the thing that really kind of like opened up my eyes was, I believe, like this whole rise in mobile apps and Facebook. Um, because like I was always on Facebook back in the day when I was in college and stuff like that. And then in parallel in college, I met a lot of entrepreneurial people that were in the whole tech scene and stuff like that, like, working for larger tech companies or, had like we used to play like games on Facebook when people used to build games on Facebook.
Yeah.
Like I was just like always intrigued by it. And that was when the wheel started turning. And I think like as well, like when I, left college, I wasn't ready to have like a full-time job where like I wanted to like, get put a suit on every day and stuff like that. Like I felt like inside of me, and I'm like a very spiritual person and I go off a lot of intuition in my gut. Um, is like I wasn't ready to like kind of throw my hands up. I was like, there's something like missing. So um me and my friends, we decided to move out to Silicon Valley to start a business. Like just we saw the social network, we're like, well, where's Google? Where's Facebook? Where's like all these companies? They're all in this one little area. So it was like, well, if I'm gonna play in the major leagues, I gotta move there. And that's when I made that move, I knew that like inside of me I had to do something that did not include putting on a suit every day and really getting my friends on board that were also very entrepreneurial and excited about startups to basically pack our bags and move to Palo Alto. And, I had no money. My grandma actually had a tax return, a pretty large one, and she started giving her grandkids like $1,200 each. And that was like my plane ticket. And, I told a lot of people, that I was moving out to California, and I just from Rhode Island. Like the only vacations I ever took was really to Disney World and stuff. So everybody was like, "Oh, you'll be back in like a month," and moved to Palo Alto, and really, we stayed with my friends in a studio on airbeds for about 9 months. And it's hard to really break into Silicon Valley if you don't go to Stanford or if you haven't worked for like a successful company before. But that was kind of like once I got off the plane in Palo Alto, I knew like, okay, the time, like I have to do this. I have to figure it out. And, my friends and I were thinking about like what ideas we should do. And I don't know who said it, but one thing that was intriguing was like these big businesses like Uber and Airbnb and stuff, they disrupted like massive, massive industries. So I was like, what industries like are large where people spend a ton of money um, and like continuously come back. There's high frequency, high retention, and what businesses like are just growing exponentially. And I thought online dating was a great area because people spend absurd amount of money on online dating, and there was like all this stigma, but people were still using it. And that's kind of when the idea kind of came about. Where we're like, okay, well, we could leverage Facebook as like a acquisition channel for users because that's when everybody was on Facebook playing games like Farmville, et cetera. Let's just like create like a social dating kind of platform and put it on top of Facebook, and that's what we did. And that was kind of like the first idea. So yeah.
No, that's interesting. So that was the dating side. And what I'm hearing there, my biggest takeaway from that is literally put yourself where your a chance of success is the highest. And so you went straight to the jugular where talent is, capital was. What's interesting there, and it's kind of a side note to this, and it's maybe a quick answer to it, but that was then. But pre-COVID or post-COVID now, that whole entire distribution of talent and resources and funding. Just a quick side note to what our direction here, but what's your thoughts on kind of the remote aspect of everything?
Yeah, I mean, like I was just thinking that in my head. Like that was then, this is now. I don't believe you need to be in Silicon Valley to raise capital, hire great people, or get anything off the ground. by any stretch of the imagination. I think like your chances, I think in a post-COVID world, you have the platforms like LinkedIn, you have AngelList, you have a lot of different platforms to like put yourself out there and raise like, pre-seed, seed rounds. Eventually, though, you probably will make your way out there to raise capital just because that's where the largest VC funds are, at least in America. But by no means does that strategy mean if you go to Silicon Valley, you're going to be successful. I've seen many successful businesses that are launched in many parts of the country. So yeah, I think post-COVID, you can be anywhere, which is beautiful because for some time it was like the notion was come to Silicon Valley, grind, hustle, meet everybody, and that's your only chance of success. And I don't think that's the case today.
Right. No, that makes sense. The so continuing on, so you did the dating
Yeah.
app. Big picture, you're looking for big markets where where there's potential friction that you could break through. Sounds very similar to what was the eventual success story here. So let's talk about kind of pairing the dating into and spinning that into or leveraging what you've already built, whether it's monetarily and kind of going down the path of WAG. Where was the idea formulated? When did you know, like, okay, well, I know it's a big market and, there's a lot of dog lovers and pet lovers out there. So you have a lot of like affinity for the product already and a problem to be solved. But like, the origin stories of that idea.
Yeah. So basically, the dating site, like I said earlier, it was like we built it on top of Facebook. And when you rely on another platform for distribution, you always run the risk of, getting kicked off, the algorithms change and whatnot. And I think that the business wasn't growing as fast as we'd like. It's almost like YouTube, right? Like you have a big YouTube channel and then all of a sudden you can post a video and you can break their guidelines and they turn your channel off, right? Then what? The business eventually, we knew that it wasn't going to be successful long term. So we decided to kind of wrap up the assets and sell them to IAC Media, which they had a dating site within IAC Media that essentially acquired the assets. And, my co-founders and I, we were young and, Palo Alto is a very, how do I put this? It's like after 8 o'clock, there's not much going on. So we're in our young 20s and we're like, let's go to LA. So moved down to LA and we brought a designer and an engineer to move with us. And it was right near Runyon Canyon, which is like a hiking trail in Hollywood where you get a lot of dogs and a lot of just like dog walkers, pets, just a lot of people. And, our next business, we wanted to build a business where people would take their credit card out immediately, meaning like they knew that like if they wanted the service, they'd have to pay for it. It wasn't like, we didn't monetize through ads or like getting them on the platform and then converting them to pay. It was like, no, like, if you use Uber, you're going to have to pay right away. So we wanted to build a business like that. And, in Runyon Canyon in 2014, there was a lot of pets. And in 2014, in general, the Uber for X model was like really taking off. You saw Instacart, DoorDash, Uber, Lyft in the US just growing exponentially. Millennials and a little bit older were getting used to that behavior by using your mobile phone, pressing a button, and something happens, whether a car shows up or groceries get delivered to your house. But what was interesting around pets that I think was very, very interesting was like, and I've been a dog lover and a pet owner my whole life, was, the lifetime value of pet parents is like exponential, right? Like you have pets throughout your whole life. Sometimes you have multiple pets at the same time and people treat their pets like their kids. And there's a lot of trust with pet parents. And I thought that like, if you could build trust long-term with pet parents, then you could have them and create a moat where they'll stick with you throughout their whole lives. So what I thought was really interesting was like, if we could get access inside of the pet parent's house and provide a service every single day, then once we built that trust and we have more product market fit, then we can launch additional services like sitting and boarding, veterinarian on-demand help, then the whole health and wellness piece of the pet space. Like there's all these different channels that we could kind of go down and monetize because we've already had the pet parent. Um, and that's where my co-founders and I were like, let's do dog walking because that's the easiest way to get inside the pet parent's house. That's the easiest way to consistently have people have their dog walked every single day because dogs have to go to the bathroom. Let's create the button on the phone for the paw and really own the whole pet stack and starting with dog walking. And that's where the idea was like, let's do Uber for dog walking really came about. And this business would have not been successful if it was launched in other areas of the country. And I'll tell you why is because in Los Angeles, many people are single until later on in life and they all have pets and there's so much traffic. It's hot. Dogs are inside all day. But then on the supply side, there's a ton of people that like are models or actors or artists, and they have a lot of side hustles. Like if you go out to dinner in LA, 90% of them are probably in entertainment. They just do this to make extra money. So it's like, who would not want to walk puppies at noon in Los Angeles? So the supply side, there's a huge demand of supply side. So that's how the idea started, and that's where the light bulb went off. But from day one, so we would go to Runyon Canyon, go up to people with pets or just random people and build conviction. And I encourage every founder to do this. Every person we talked to and told them this is what we want to build, would you use a service like this? 95% of the people said yes. And for some reason, like I said earlier, I go off my gut and intuition. The gut was like, move forward and build this. And that's kind of how it all started.
That's interesting. So again, it sounds like so one thing you went from trying to connect relationships to then providing a service for arguably one of the strongest relationships, which is an owner with their pet. And it almost sounds as if the idea was very specific and local, which allowed this product to eventually go national. And I don't know, global, but big enough. So it's fascinating that again, it sounds like this was an idea conceived at the very local market. Now, product market fit is the big buzzword. Obviously, it sounds like you did this anecdotally by kind of generally surveying people walking around or friends and family in the area, and using intuition based off of that feedback. You rolled with it. Did you roll with this? Self-funded originally? Did you get funding immediately? Talk about that specific moment where it was either product market fit that at least attracted attention from a funding perspective, or it was just the idea, and then you guys executed along that.
Yeah. So, we put a little bit of like our own capital early on in the business, but, we took the approach of like, let's not get like 1 million pet parents to like sort of like us, but get like 100 pet parents that are obsessed with you that will use you every day. So we really focused on penetrating LA first. Had a little bit of traction. It wasn't something that went from like 0 to like 100 super fast. But since this was a digital product, and we wanted to scale this product, we probably 3 to 4 months after launch decided to go raise a seed round, because we knew that this was a venture backable business and we wanted to scale this business and other services. So initially, put a little bit of capital in ourselves and then went straight to the VCs, and raised like a $750K seed round. And, I would say that we built a little of a network to some degree in Silicon Valley from the previous venture, which I think just kind of snowballed into more intros to folks in Silicon Valley. And to be honest with you, a lot of the LA investors passed on WAG early on, because they thought it was more of a lifestyle business. They didn't understand that this could be the button on your phone for your paw. So we raised the seed, and by no means did we have product market fit then, but we had good penetration in Los Angeles. One thing that, the early team at WAG really did was just like really build like just a great customer service team, but more so we were like super data driven. We're like, we understood like how much would it cost to, either do on the paid marketing side, or what does the playbook look like to bring on dog walkers, and like really refine the product where the experience in LA was phenomenal, and then rolled it out into San Francisco and like the Peninsula area. And once we had those two markets where we were consistently doing dog walks per day, we kind of just fine-tuned the machine. A lot of our processes were very manual at first. So we didn't like invest all this money in technology and build all this software out. We really did everything manual and consistently talk to our customers and talk to our walkers and kind of iterated off of that feedback, which allowed us to really create a playbook where it was like, okay, we are in these two markets. We know how to scale, into new markets. We know how to hire walkers. We know how to get customers. We know how to do marketing around these new markets. Now let's start building technology from an automation perspective and start rolling it out into more markets and have that mindset where it's like, let's grow at all costs and try to, just blanket blitz scale the whole country. And, we were, I would say that we did a really good job with fundraising. And I think a lot of the investors, our data showed that what the VCs loved about WAG was that majority of our customers have never used a dog walker in their life. And I think that since we were creating a whole new behavior and a whole new habit within the pet industry, the VCs were very, very excited about that. So quickly went on to raise multiple rounds of financing, ended up raising close to like 400 million in capital for the business. And we really focused on dog walking for the first like year and a half, 2 years. Got to a scale where then, since we already had the supply side of walkers, we asked our walkers, hey, would you like to be a sitter or do daycare? So we didn't have to like go reinvent the wheel because we already had the supply side of hundreds of thousands of walkers. Let's just launch a new service. And we did that, and we were able to scale that very quickly and just grow the business from that perspective.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Now talk about the so from a funding perspective, you guys raised a lot of capital, very successful. Product is cool and a lot of again, affinity for that part of that type of service. How do you think about funding then? I mean, I know you said the strategy there was blitzscaling. Now, fast forward to today, how do you think about funding then, right? In terms of, would you have done anything different? There's the concept of, raise as much money as possible, but there's also the concept of don't raise as much. Just from a founder's perspective, just any thoughts around, what we've all learned over the last, call it, decade within funding, and just your general thoughts on funding in general. What would, if you were starting WAG all over again, what would be the strategy there?
Yeah, I think you make a really good point. I think companies can get over capitalized too quickly before they really have true network effects or product market fit to some degree. I think for WAG, so we raised $300 million from Softbank. I don't know if I were to go back in time, I probably would say not raise as much capital. Obviously with capital, there's dilution. Obviously with these large funding rounds, there's liquidation preferences. There's things that, are just not bumps in the road, but things you have to be mindful of. And I think that WAG was not at a scale where it needed all that capital. So I'd probably raise less and just grow the business from that perspective. I also think, and I've said this publicly a few times, at conferences and maybe on some podcasts as well, but when you raise hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, people that are in the organization, like employees and stuff, it almost gives the notion of we've already made it. And now we have all this money and now we're going to ride off into the sunset. I think that, that sometimes it can hurt the business from a cultural perspective where there's so much cash, there's so much cushion where it's no, we're still in a startup here. We're by no means, the largest pet company in the world. So we got a long way to go. I think that there was some of that. But I think quickly that was kind of flushed out. But I don't think it's just a WAG thing. I think it's kind of everybody thing.
Sure.
I know now I think so now the funding rounds are a lot larger. Our seed was $750K. That was in 2015. Seed rounds now, in the US and now in India, that where I invest my full time is 1 to 3 million. Valuations have gone up. Obviously, we're in this bear market now. Valuations are starting to come down to some degree. I haven't seen a whole lot of it, but everything's just bigger now. I would say with founders, what I would recommend is um, raise capital, but the number one thing is like raise from value add people, value add angels, value add funds. You don't need to have a tier one for your seed round. There'll always be there. And just bring on value add people that can actually move needles within your business, and that are truly passionate about what you're building. There's so much capital out there globally that if you can master the art of fundraising and if you can master the art of telling a story and selling a vision, you'll be able to raise capital. But I believe that the easy part is raising capital. The harder part is finding value add investors that can actually move the business in the right direction, from 0 to 1.
Yeah.
Because you see a lot of companies raising capital and then like their business does nothing, but they raise money. So.
Yeah, no, exactly. And if the unit economics don't work at the start, you're just scaling kind of an unprofitable business. For some of these, I mean, we've seen that over the last decade, specifically recently. You talked about, speaking of founders here, there's founders and then there's co-founders. And I think, what's your view on that approach? There's some that want to go out there and say, I don't want to give anything up immediately. But the reality behind that is, businesses take multiple type of kind of skills and personalities and different hours of the day, and different focal points, and then there's co-founders where, again, you can have that right-hand person that is either the kind of exactly like you and or complements you in a material way. What's your view? There's no like black and white there. It's just simply, what's your view on kind of the founders out there that say, I want to control everything versus I'm willing to kind of start this business with somebody else?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, finding co-founders is like one of the hardest parts of doing a startup. I personally do not invest in solo founders. I know a lot of people do. I know a lot of great funds that do. I just don't do that, because if the founder gets hit by a bus, who's going to run the business? That's basically like just my thing. However, I think also starting a business by yourself is a very lonely journey. Startups at the early stages is all about pace and moving super fast. And if it's just you, there's only so many hours in the day, and you may be an expert in one or two things, but you lack in other areas. Whereas if you brought somebody on that was an expert in the things you lack, you could really complement each other really well. So I'm super bullish on co-founders. I believe that you should have co-founders. Finding people that complement you and don't have your skill sets, I think, is a superpower if you can find people like that. But really, I would recommend that you should find co-founders. You should be able to give equity away. Build relationships with people first. My co-founders at WAG, I knew before we even started businesses together, so we had a relationship from that perspective. My co-founder now with 2AMVC, we met before our fund. We angel invested together. I sent him deals that he invested in. He sent me deals that I invested in, things of that nature. So we built a rapport. I went to India in 2019 to meet his family, indirectly knowing I was going to do a fund with him. So right. You want to build some sort of relationship first with the person. And then really find someone that you want to wake up every single day and execute on that same vision. And really kind of, finding people that are going to hold their weight, right? If you're both 50-50 partners, that other person needs to be giving 50%, they have to be worth their equity. Right. So, I think a lot of, one of the main reasons why startups die is because of co-founder issues. And, I've seen that happen as a founder, and I've seen that happen now as a VC. And it's tough. It's a really tough place to be in, where to find people. And I think that's one of the biggest issues founders have, is finding people that they love working with, that are also as equally as passionate, that also has skill sets that complement the business really well. It's tough.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Question.
Yeah, no, the couple more kind of questions around for this series, which again, we'll have a second part where he's talking about trends and kind of these spaces. But again, for kind of two areas, which is, and you highlighted some of it already, but the biggest challenge that you faced during that time and kind of how you overcame it, thought about it mentally, execution wise. And then the second one is, and you'll probably can mold this all together, is, advice for somebody that is doing it today. You're investing in them, but you also have gone through the process successfully. The company's public today. I don't know if I said that at the beginning, but in general, those two things: biggest challenge, how you overcame it, and then any advice for anyone growing their business.
Yeah, I think like that's a great question. I think the biggest challenge as a founder has been having the tough skin to wake up every single day and be in the fight. Like you have your ups, your downs, no matter how well the business is doing, there's things that always come up. And the challenging part for me was, you know, consistently riding this roller coaster for years of like, I'm not really making any money. I'm living, in a house full of people. Like I don't have my own really space. Like, and then you question yourself where you're like, man, am I really like supposed to do this? Am I really going down the right path? Like this stuff's like working, but it's not working. It's like you play mental games within yourself and it's just a roller coaster. And like, the biggest challenge for me, I think, was just after years, because I spent years in Silicon Valley and it didn't really like there wasn't really from like a success perspective. Like I learned a lot, but it wasn't like a success. And then I had to go spend more years and kind of do it again. And like, it's tired, right? It's like
Right.
it's like being like an athlete. And, I had really good people in my corner that believed in me. Again, it's going back to sports, like, I played Division I soccer. I loved being on teams. I loved being a leader on teams. I woke up every day to practice on the field. And like, I treated it as like I was on this team. And like, you know, I think that those skill sets as a kid and going into college with sports really molded me to be mentally strong for these startups, but it was very challenging at times. So kind of that was the biggest challenge. And then kind of how I overcame that challenge was, um, so I live next to this running trail or this trail in running canyon in LA. And for me is like I thrive off of exercise. Like I just love getting the endorphins out. I love just like, you know, um, just being active. And I'm like addicted to releasing energy. And I started running in LA on these trails. And it was beautiful, like running outside, like you're in nature. Like there's hills, there's like, I just got like a really good workout. And, I started like kind of running on a, daily basis and actually got into trail running and started getting into like, marathon, trail
Wow.
running, et cetera. And like, that was a huge outlet for me where like, I could just like detach myself from the startup world and everything that was going on. I just really focused on like the running piece just to like be mentally and just get exercise. And it really helped me like balance me out. So my advice would be like, as for founders, is like find something that can take you away from kind of your every single day, some sort of hobby, like whatever it is. Like, I think that's like true. And I think that like everybody thinks like in startups, like you have to work 24/7 and like, you know, that's like a lot of it is true. Like you have to sacrifice, you have to put everything you have into it, but you also have to like prevent burnout. Like you only can go so long until like you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, And then lastly, I'll just add another challenging thing was like the sacrifice. Like so I grew up in Rhode Island, like I said. I have a sister that lives in Sarasota, Florida, where I'm now. I miss birthdays, I miss holidays. I'm on the other side of the country. I just can't fly all the time to see people. And I was all in on this startup or on these startups. Like I was like, I'm doing this, and like my family understood, but I sacrificed. I missed out on a lot, and that's a huge reason why I'm in Sarasota now. Is because I'm like, okay, I have to not make up for lost time, but like I want to be here now. And I think in startups, like that was a huge challenging piece. But when I see founders now that are like, oh well, I don't want to. When I, from an investment perspective, like when founders are like, oh, I'm raising money to get started, or like, I'm still working at a company and like, I may want to start this. Like,
Right.
I don't invest in people like that.
Yeah. No, I get that. It's like, I founded Avery, and you jump off, and you have to, you're giving up the salary, and the income, and you have to do that. And in some cases, yeah, there's bridges to get to the other side. But generally speaking, it's not that way. So, I'll end there. Thanks for coming on this part of the series, 0 to 100, learning more about how you built WAG. You went from like 0 to public in like 7 years, or something like that. Pretty spectacular. I think from kind of final takeaway for you is just where can people learn more? Whether it's the next series, we'll talk more about your VC activities and trends and thoughts there. But learning more about you, where can they find more about Brendan?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn has been and I'm happy to share more about LinkedIn, but LinkedIn has been a gift for me. I use LinkedIn for many parts of my life, and I love sharing about my journey. So just Brendan Rogers on LinkedIn. So I think it's like linkedin.com/Brendan P. Rogers. And
yeah, I'll put it in the notes so people can track it. So go to his LinkedIn. Cool. Awesome, Brendan. That was great.
Likewise. Thank you
Good
so much
stuff,
for having
man.
me.
Yep.